Hey there, theater makers, and welcome back to another episode of Theater's Not Dead with Keyanna Alexander. This week starts us off on one of the series I've been the most excited about for season 3. We're talking about Reshaping Othello. Yes, Othello, by that guy we all know his name. And guess who we have to kick us off in this conversation? It's JaMeeka Holloway, y'all. It's the director. She's starting us off. I'm so psyched. I'm so ready. Before I get into her bio, a couple of quick reminders though. Y'all, follow us on Coffee. Subscribe to us on Coffee. You'll get some exclusive content over there, including my blog, Key Thoughts, along with some general shenanigans. I don't know if anyone noticed today, but we have a new theme song. So check out DeMarcus. He is on Spotify. He has blessed us with some new music, and I'm so excited about it. So thank you, and I hope our audience enjoys it, because that's what we're rocking for the rest of this season. Okay, let's get into it. JaMeeka Holloway is a producer, director, and gatherer based in Durham, North Carolina, a lover of Black people and Black stories, and a Shakespeare sleuth. Okay, without further ado, here she is, JaMeeka!
Hey, Keyanna.
Hi, friend. How are you?
Thank you for the introduction and the infectious energy that you are sharing with us right now. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to attribute my energy to the large amount of caffeine I have consumed this morning, but I think it's largely for the anticipation I'm experiencing for this conversation. You've been on the show before, haven't you?
A time or two.
A time or two. So everyone, if you love what you're hearing about JaMeeka today, you definitely want to go check out Women Doing the Damn Thing, where she talks even more about being wonderful. And before we dive into our official conversation, I would love for everyone in this moment to pause and bask in the glory that is JaMeeka's look today. Because sometimes JaMeeka serves us looks, and I think we should all readily acknowledge it out in public and just say, between the lips and the hoops and the half up, half down, it's a whole aesthetic, and I thank you for it.
Thank you, Keyanna. Listen, way to make a girl feel really affirmed this afternoon. I appreciate it. Thank you. I dolled up just for you.
And no, I feel special.
Otherwise, I would not look like this. I'm in rehearsal in the evening, so I likely would have thrown some lipstick on around 5:30. Yeah, folks don't want to see me without the glam.
I'm just so in love with that's your excuse. Even if it's not true, I will gladly be your excuse.
It's so
for your
true.
look.
I promise you. Folks who know, this is not my pre-12 o'clock look at all. My teeth are even brushed right now.
Yes. I wasn't prepared for how good you looked, and I should have known, and yet somehow I was still surprised. Since you've been a guest previously on the show, I've technically already asked you this question, but I'm going to ask it again anyways. How did you get started in theater?
Oh, sure. Okay, that's always loaded, and I'm pretty sure I always give something that is slightly, that says something slightly different. But I would say that I actually got involved in theater in high school at Durham School, middle and high school at Durham School of the Arts. I started out on the tech theater track, and then in tech theater, the technical director actually put Fences in My Hand by August Wilson, and it just really enlivened my interest around storytelling and theater making. So it would be, I think, extremely long story short, my experience at Durham School of the Arts. introduced me and started me on my career as in theater making as a career. But I will attribute my love and value of storytelling to the community and the people that I grew up with, who just very inherently were very vibrant and colorful people, and it piqued my interest in in perspective and ideas, and in the forming of story. You know, there's an art in the art of like what makes something story, and I think my upbringing in the church also sort of cultivated my palette for creativity. Just, you know, the choir robes, and we had like colorful flags in my church, and there was a dance team and the mime team, and my pastor was extremely vivacious and was very scintillating with her storytelling. And I think that was probably like the catalyst for my trajectory in theater.
Yes, we love baby artists that grow up to be adult artists. Yes. So you mention it in your bio a wee bit, but let's dive into it a little further. What is your relationship to Shakespeare and his works?
My relationship with Shakespeare, it's actually new and still evolving. We are figuring out our love language right now, Keyanna. But we also know that there's a lot of work and reckoning and reconciling to do. And I'm not completely sold on Shakespeare, but we're dating. I'm interested in him. We're splitting the bill right now when we go out and taking it slow. But I was actually introduced to Shakespeare a long time ago in high school at Durham School of the Arts. And like many other folks of color, had written Shakespeare off and said that it wasn't for me. But I was always like really fascinated by Shakespeare and Shakespearean actors and the sort of technique that I saw that went along with the work. So was sort of like put off by the elitism that surrounded the work, and the supremacy of Shakespeare, the artist. But was still very interested in the poetry and language and the rhythm and his worlds and his characters. And so I think it was in 2017, I want to say it was 2017, I had sort of set one of my goals for the year was to meet Shakespeare. Like I wanted to like meet Shakespeare. Me, you here this day, let's talk out our issues and our beef. And so I applied for an assistant director fellowship at the Oregon Shakespeare Festival. And it was there that Shakespeare...
Life, it's totally fine.
It was there that Shakespeare actually opened up to me and opened up for me. And we were able to have conversations with one another. And one of the things that I realized is that, like, I think Shakespeare, it's okay that people are not all enamored with him. And I think that and what I've come to learn about Shakespeare, or think about Shakespeare, because I can only just imagine, is that he loves the sort of push and pull relationship that folks have with his work. I think he is very interested in this critical analysis that folks are having around his work and his relevancy. I think that's the artist that Shakespeare wanted to be. He wanted to be, I think he enjoys the sort of like conflict that people have around his work. There's no way to like box him in actually or be exactly on the nose. And I think it was that reconciliation that I didn't have to like fawn over Shakespeare to actually know and understand his work. So it was like I think since 2017, we've been in this like toxic, but also at times very loving relationship. And we are still trying to figure it out.
I think that describes a lot of people's relationships with Shakespeare, especially like people of color, because his work aside, exactly what you're saying, there's this air, there's this environment that's been built around his works
Yes.
that makes it very uncomfortable for people.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
yeah, and I love this metaphor of you and him like meeting in somebody's library. That's where I'm placing the fight. And you're just like, all right, say your piece.
Say your piece. That's exactly what it is. And you know, and being out at the Oregon Shakespeare Festival, you get out there, right, and think that everybody's like Shakespeare radicals. But I think it was such a life affirming experience for me because I got to be in conversation with Shakespeare scholars and people who are sort of highly esteemed in Shakespeare practice. And they were still reconciling some of the same things that me as a novice were dealing with as well. And so my experience at the Oregon Shakespeare Festival was very self-affirming because I learned there I learned there to start like deconstructing and dismantling the supremacy around Shakespeare. And I think it is that sort of supremacy and pedestalizing of Shakespeare that sort of off-puts him. And what I also learned at the OSF is that actually, like Shakespeare, there was a time when Shakespeare began writing for nobility and was writing for the king and queen. But when he first started out as just like a freelance artist, he was writing for the coin. Like Shakespeare was writing to get his bag up. And I'm like, oh, I can relate. I could, as an artist who has had to like hustle her art in a sense to make ends meet, I was able to understand Shakespeare was never a scholar. And I don't say that to say that I don't think Shakespeare was a brilliant man. I think he was brilliant enough to have us still like having these conversations about his work 400 years later. But I also think that Shakespeare was like real regular degular, like any local artist who is trying to make it until, trying to just like make ends meet until the next level. And his career was able to reach those heights. But Shakespeare reminds me all the time that we all start from the bottom. At some bottom, the bottom of some end of the spectrum or some point on the spectrum. And so, yeah, that my relationship with Shakespeare was just, I think, seeing him as a playwright, just a playwright. Like, I know playwrights. I'm friends with playwrights. I know what that's like. So just like sort of removing the rose-colored glasses and just being able to see him as a person, and as an artist trying to navigate art making and art producing.
Yes. You did a project in the last fall, for play on Shakespeare called Love's Labour's Lost. And could you describe for our audience kind of what was your approach for that Shakespeare production? And did any of that carry over into your Othello vision?
Sure, absolutely. So in the fall, I started a series that I'm hoping to pick back up, later on this year or maybe next year, but that we were calling Black Girls Love the Bard. And I called it Black Girls Love the Bard because I think because of the sheer reactions that I have gotten from folks in the past when I told them that I was like interested in Shakespeare. People are like, wow, oh my God. And I'm like, yeah. Like if people have said, I've heard people say like, I didn't know like Black folks, did Shakespeare, like Shakespeare. And I'm like, oh yeah, it's a thing. And I just wanted to create more representation around Black women engaging the bard, engaging Shakespeare's work. Because to be honest, my inspiration for this work that I do with Shakespeare was incited not by like a white man, but by two Black women, Sam White, who is the founder of Shakespeare in Detroit, who gave me the opportunity to direct my first Shakespeare show, Twelfth Night, and it was a play on translation by the brilliant, magnificent Allison Carey. And then Dawn Monique Williams. I was her assistant at the Oregon Shakespeare Festival, and her beginnings with Shakespeare are, and she's a scholar. I mean, she's a Shakespeare goddess. If I have a question about Shakespeare, those two women are the folks that I'm gonna go and like, you know, source my information from. Like they're the most immediate folks I know who I could be in conversation with, and they're Black women. And then, but there's also this like, I don't know, stigma around like Black women doing in Shakespeare practice. I mean, and look at the artistic director at the largest Shakespeare company in the States is a Black woman, Nataki Garrett. And so I just wanted to just affirm, yeah, Black girls love the bard. We're here and we are in Shakespeare practice and we are revolutionizing it, and we are changing the paradigms and shifting the conversations and the narrative that folks are having with these characters and having around the work and having around like who our audiences are and where it can be produced. And so I have just been very inspired by Black women in my journey with Shakespeare. So yeah, I wanted to just create this sort of like life affirming event where there were more Black, where there was this cast of Black women. Keyanna, you were there in rehearsals. I typically just like gathered that room and then stood back and let them like have the conversation with the characters and the play. I directed maybe like a bit of that, but I think like the biggest thing that I did for that event was to curate it and put it together and get these Black women in the room to just celebrate their love for Shakespeare. And that's what it was. Like, we weren't trying to create like a masterful Shakespearean performance. It was just masterful because like we got Black women who are literally holding the world up on their shoulders in this room this week doing this Shakespeare. And that was the like revolutionary political act that we were, that was like unfolding with the work. Yeah, so Black girls love the bard. Again, it was just, for me, it's just like, I think all the time about the little girls like me who are interested in storytelling because they saw something at their church or like a school fashion show or at the, you know, the recreation center in their hoods, but haven't been able to see themselves represented in the work. So Black Girls Love the Bard just wants to be out there in the world for all of those like Black girls who are searching for themselves in Shakespeare and don't want to see themselves as the courtese, as like the prostitute or the maid or, you know, the prop, you know, or the token feature in the piece, but just want to see themselves like in a very natural way integrated in the work. So that's why Black Girls Love the Bard is like out there in the world, and I'm excited to continue on that journey. But it was Black Girls Love the Bard. Johannah came to me and was like, Johannah, I was supposed to direct something for the Women's Theater Festival, I think in this slot, and that didn't meet fruition. And Johannah was like, I still would love to have you come and direct. And, you know, she was like, and she was so like welcoming to my feedback and my thoughts on it. And she's like, what would you like to direct? Is there something in particular you'd like to direct? And I was like, I would love to do some Shakespeare. And she was like, yeah, you know, so we try to work a lot with Women's Theater Festival. We work a lot with, you know, or our goal is to center women playwrights. So Shakespeare obviously like lives outside of that box. And I was like, oh, but there's a translation of a Shakespeare play by this Black woman that I've been interested in, Mfuniso Udofia. And Johannah was like, yes, I love it. Can you get me the script? And I got her, I got her the script. I'm pretty sure I'm telling that story a little bit wrong, but it happened something like that. And then I, you know, over the last couple of years have been doing a lot of relationship building with the Play on Shakespeare fam, meeting them at OSF, and then also directing the Play on translation of Twelfth Night, and actually the associate creative director of play on Shakespeare. Taylor Bailey was my assistant director on the 12th Night production. And so I've spent the last couple of years building relationship with them, and have expressed on numerous occasions that I was really interested in these translations, and had the opportunity to talk to Louis a couple of times about what some of my ideas for the work would be. And so, I think I kind of, my perspective on the work really excited them. And I connected Johannah with them, and then there was like this love fest around the idea of this work. And it is meeting its fruition right now. It's like it's been cultivated towards manifestation right now.
Yes, and we do have Johannah in our waiting room, but before we bring her on, I had one more question I was dying to ask you individually.
Mm-hmm.
Othello,
Mm-hmm.
right? I think especially for Black people, it stands out for us as a Shakespearean work, as a piece of theater work. Um, how is your perception of Othello as a show? And
Mm-hmm.
then how do you feel about the adaptation that you're working on?
My perception of Othello as a show, like as the original work, has just been muffled by the history of the performance of these plays. For years, this play has been played by a white man in blackface. And so that immediately had just always been a turnoff for me around the work. And I also was I also had read a lot of like scholarly dissertation where folks debated about whether or not Othello was about otherness, or is it specifically about race. And Infoniso's translation really pursues the latter argument. This is about race. This is about the disembodiment of a Black person, and her script in a way that the original text allows things to be sort of like lulled in beautiful language and poetry. Infoniso's script really pulls back the layers, and we actually get to sink our teeth into the racist language that is actually laced all throughout this script. I mean, all of the animal references, likening Othello to an ape and to this like black stallion, and like all of this inflammatory and derogatory language that people have been able to sort of like gloss over as it's been, coupled inside of Shakespeare's beautiful language, just really gets pulled back here. And something that Ta-Nehisi Coates actually said a while back has really struck me and has been sitting with me as I continue to dive into this work. But he says that racism is a visceral experience. And then he goes on to say that, here's what I would like for you to know. In America, it is tradition to destroy the Black body. It is heritage. And so what we are unearthing in this production of Othello is that Iago is not just a white person seeking to dispossess Othello, or to bring her down with this like multifaceted scheme. Iago is actually is symbolic of a tradition of white Americans to disembody, to dislodge Black brains and Black airways, and to destroy Blackness. And I feel really drawn to this work because there are so many conversations that we are having right now around institutions and Black folks and people of color, and our relationships to them. And I think this whole like Meghan Markle conversation has also really like illuminated and opened up this Othello even more, because in her interview, Meghan says, I thought that this institution was actually going to protect me. I thought, she didn't say this, but she said, but in my mind, I thought that my proximity to whiteness was going to protect me. And what she is learning and has learned is that like white supremacy is designed to protect whiteness, and no matter how close you are, you're still always just a hopeful adjacent. And so anyways, this play right now, I know I'm kind of circling all around your question, Keyanna. This play right now is just so relevant to the conversations that we are having as a country and as a world, in ways that I never could have even imagined when I had said, Johannah, this is the show that we should do.
Yeah. What? You like answered my question times 1,000. And that was one of the things I really wanted to dive into with you and Johannah, was the timeliness of this particular production. So before I get your answer to that, let's go ahead and bring on Johannah. Hello, friend.
Hello.
Hi, and welcome back. You two have been a previous guest to the show.
Thanks. It's a pleasure to be here, Keyanna.
So I think you heard the question before I asked you to come on, but yes, a Black woman of color focused Othello production. Why now? Why is this important?
You want me to talk about that?
Whoever wants to go first, I want to hear both of you talk.
Yeah, I just, to me, it's just, I have, this is an opportunity for me to get to bring my lived experience to the work. And I think that period Shakespeare's are amazing. I love a good period piece. Like in general, like Bridgerton, I'm telling you, like I'm watching it again for the 5th time. I love a good like period piece, a piece that's set in a period that is like historic. But I also feel very strongly about figuring out how Shakespeare's texts live and are relevant to us in a more tangible way. We can walk out our doors and experience this work at like what's happening in this work at our own work. And so I wanted to bring, I think the best way that I could bring myself to Shakespeare is to actually be bringing what I know. And, it's been helpful to have, a dramaturg, and y'all know our dramaturg, Monet Marshall, whoop, whoop, is amazing, unmatched, can't be touched. That's my girl. I could go on and on and on and on and on. But I also, there's also some things that are just like, that are just very inherent for me, because the way that we are shaping the story is through experience that I have lived through and can imagine that I will still, I will continue to sort of navigate space like that. So it's just important. So for me, it's important that we like take this Shakespeare work and then also figure out like how we can see it in our now. And that's what that's what I want to be doing with this production of Othello.
Totally. Yes, ending that. I have like long held a philosophy around put the process in the product. And part of the process of the organization of Women's Theater Festival is how do we become more anti-racist? How do we deal with our status as a predominantly white institution and how we've harmed women of color, and particularly Black women who've engaged with our organization. And simultaneously been diving into Adrienne Maree Brown's emergent strategy, which again, JaMeeka and I are like creative soulmates. And if we get to go into all the ways that that's true, but part of that emergent strategy is this idea of the fractal. And that if you take something on its small level, you're propelling it out to the universal. So this issue of harm that is done to Black women and the responsibilities of PWIs is happening at every level. And so for us to deal with it inside the world of the play and inside the walls of our organization simultaneously, we're doing work that can reverberate out to that larger national need, this outcry for change.
Yeah.
Whew. Yeah. I mean, it's exactly how both of you said that while the spotlight is on these issues, while there is call to action happening right here, right now, these are the stories we need to hear. And these are the stories we should continue to hear. I won't get tired of them.
Yeah. And I think it's just important because it's important because I think that we use like historic anecdotes all the time, right? And those are valid and those experiences are valid, but they're also like very real and present day instances of what we're trying to grapple with for us to glean from. And it's like low hanging fruit really for me anyways, because like I'm here in this now. So it just makes sense that I be sort of, what do I want to say, encapsulating the now, what's happening now in our work for, future audiences and future generations to I think through art actually be able to say, well, this is what was happening at this time because this is the art that they were doing and producing.
Absolutely.
Oh, sorry. I was going to just add in this very real opportunity for white women such as myself for us to look inward in a real way at this Iago and confront our own times of behaving like Iago. When have I been the Iago in a situation? And what am I doing to change?
Absolutely.
Yes. Ooh, I love some self-inflection. Yes.
Yeah. And I hope that our audiences, I actually am never as a director thinking with what's the lesson that I'm going to like teach the white folks, right? And that's never my goal. But I also am hopeful that there are some takeaways. And I hope that folks are individuals and then also like organizations and institutions who have a history and a structure that is embedded in white supremacy and the exploitation of Black folks and diversity for the propelling of their organizations can actually, I hope that they see themselves. I hope that we're able to, this character will allow us to sort of like hold up a mirror to folks in a way that doesn't allow you to obscure it. Like this is what it is. This is who we are. We were with this character of Iago, and it's actually been, a challenge already for our actor who's playing this role because she's a good person. She's great. But she's having to sort of like tap into this violence, this diabolical violence. I said to her, you have to tap into that energy that we see when we've seen like white mothers outside of schoolhouses trying to prevent Black folks from getting into the school. So if you've ever seen like the students in Arkansas who were integrating the school systems, or in Ruby Bridges' story, or even in Charlotte here in North Carolina, it's that. And y'all know those images I'm talking about. Like that's the thing that you've got to tap in. You've got to tap into that rage, that anger, that hate, but then also be able to cradle yourself in the fact that, but I'm a good mom to my kids. I can be horrible out here to these Black kids trying to get into this space. But I'm also a good parent, and I fix food for my husband, and I take pies to my neighbors. It's that thing that you have to tap into. And so I think the same way that Othello, like some of what Othello is navigating is like the muscle memory of what it means to be a descendant of Black African slaves here in America, Iago also has to tap into that character, that actor has to tap into that ancestral muscle of hate that we've seen displayed against POCs in this country since 1619, since before 1619, since, indigenous folks were slaughtered. Yeah.
And I can't possibly, and especially in this Iago's case, I can't possibly be racist. My best friends are Black. Look, I'm married to somebody, a person.
Yes, that's it. Because our Amelia's Black. That's exactly right.
Like, come on, I can't. No, it doesn't track. And that particular type of insidious, violence, the word you use, which is totally appropriate. We got to look at it, and we've got to.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the only way to then be able to root it out. Yeah.
I'm only going to backtrack us a wee bit, I promise.
Yeah.
We talked about organizations and institutes and the factor that they play in the violence against Othello. So I'm going to ask the question, and then whoever wants to answer, feel free. What did the decision for Women's Theater Festival, a PWI, to produce this work, what was the path to that decision? And nope, that was it. That's the question.
Well, JaMeeka, I think you said it really well in the segment before I hopped on. That truly is how it all came to be. That JaMeeka, I still want to work with you. What ideas do you have? What do you want to work on? And you brought the thing that at the stage we were as an organization and that I was in personally with cultivating an anti-racist ethos was the only way through to really walk into the truths and the history of what's happening. Again, on the small micro level of us as humans, us as representatives of our industry, and all the way out to Breonna Taylor, all of it. And that's why it felt very interesting to just go ahead and do the work. Just say, go ahead and do the work while doing the work. And if we mess up along the way, we mess up along the way. But to me, it felt like the right kind of bravery for the organization. And also it felt very satisfying to be putting together such a large budget that truly does go towards paying Black women to be creative and to put this project together. There's a real my own personal and professional leaning towards repair and reparations. Let me just say the word reparations. What can I do as a person who runs a nonprofit that is a PWI? I kind of, after JaMeeka led the Black Women in Theater keynote for us this summer at the festival, I laid a little gauntlet to myself from that conversation that from now on, whenever we hire a Black woman to do a job, we're going to pay her more than we've ever paid anyone in that role. And that could be one step of repair and one step of moving something forward that is a systemic problem in our industry. Does that
I'm really hung up on a phrase that you just used, Johannah, the right kind of bravery, because these are complicated issues. We are talking about race relations and institutionalized oppression, and people are meeting it at different levels, and where it is reasonable and justified to have zero tolerance for misbehavior, for violence, let's call it for what it is. that progress forward, though, can look like a lot of different things depending on the institution, depending on your collaborators. So I'm fascinated to think about bravery on a spectrum and less a yes or no question. So just some takeaways that I just got from that. So thank you, Johannah, for offering that sentiment. I'm going to move us on to the next question. What is the communication structure for this all Black / all POC production as it is operating within the PWI?
Communication structure. Can you just elaborate on that for me just a little further?
Sure. So what is how hands-on are the white people, to put it more simply? And then also, like, how are the collaborators within the Othello team interacting with one another versus interacting with the production staff from Women's Theater Festival?
Good question, loaded question, but that's a great question. I think that first things first is that I think the way that I just want to acknowledge that the team that I have assembled and I'm rolling with in this process is, as Keyanna alluded to, we have a team of all Black film designers, Black stage management team, and Keyanna's our technical director, Black woman here. And so my focus has been on the relationship building between like that group of like my core creative team. Even the first time we got together on the telephone, like I just wanted to just like kick it with these women and just like, talk on a very informal, I hear footsteps, my kid's gonna bust in the room. Y'all hear the door.
My puppy's
that's so cool. She's showing me troll stuff, super cool. I'll be finished shortly. Welcome to my life. I am a mom. That's so funny. So yeah, I just really wanted to build community, like have community. I wanted, my goal really is to build a strong core. And then I feel like what we are able to build and solidify, then as we were speaking about fractals, then that sort of trickles off into the larger organization. And I didn't name it, but our dramaturg, who I talked about earlier, also dramaturg and intimacy coordinator, Black woman. And one of the things that I love about having Monet on the team is that she's always slowing us down to pause. And I am I'm a daughter of the American theater, and I have learned to power through, to be nonstop. We've got to get to this product. And if this product does not hit the stage in a very specific way, we have not done our job. We have failed. We have dropped the ball in different places. And one of the things that Monet has uplifted for me is that we actually have all of the time that we need. And Adrienne Marie Brown actually talks about that in her work as well. We actually, the time that we need for this process, like we have it. And the universe time is a construct, and the universe is actually much more abundant with time than we like to give it credit for. And so anyways, the goal for me was to just like solidify and ground my team. And then I could deal more gracefully with the production team. So I think, the culture that I've tried to foster, that we've been trying to foster with the creatives on the team, Monet keeps us reminded that this belongs, like this sort of practice of care actually needs to be like infiltrating this entire process. And so we also try to bring the spirit of care even onto the like production side of what it is that we're doing. And so I think, you know, a part of our work has also been like saying to this like PWI, who y'all are the Women's Theater Festival right here on this panel. Y'all know that y'all are like nonstop. There's always something coming. And this, what I'm hoping that the conversation that this process and other ways that I've been integrated into WTF has sort of cultivated a palette for, let's pause. We still have time to get all the work done we need to, but we're going to center each other. We're going to put people over policy, people over product right now. And I think it's that sort of culture that we've been fostering that has allowed us to create the treatment around how we exist in this PWI, rather than allowing the PWI to say, hey, we hired y'all to do the show. We're going to show y'all we're going to tell y'all like how to exist in this space. I said all of that to say that I think we have sort of like taken the helm of what the pace of this process looks like and how we handle people. Johannah, can you?
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, like I am such a huge fan of you and Monet, and just have like such reverence of both of your like I would never have dared to tell you how to create. I'm like, just even in auditions, I was just still so grateful to be in a room with the two of you. I'm like, oh my gosh, we're in a room together doing stuff. Oh my gosh. But I think so yes, all that you just shared about diving deep in with the creative team, and then next to, and also, and aside from that, I think that you and I have put together a trusting relationship, like that we are both willing to come from our perspectives in vulnerability and in truth and in trust, to help take care of each other through this process. And I mean, to me, it's like a gift to get to like hold your creative work in a producerial way, to be able to like, hey, can I take I know you're used to self-producing. I know you could produce this show on your own. You don't actually need my help, but can I take some of the annoying parts of producing off your plate so that you can focus on those creative conversations?
Yeah. And I'm all about like Black folks and POCs going into these predominantly white institutions and sifting through the resources, like getting the resources that you need, because at the end of the day, these like granting organizations and institutions who are giving these monies to these institutions have been built on the backs of people who look like me. And so I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna let Johannah raise the money and do that. You know, I also am very aware though that I think that there like my social capital and like the relationships that I've been able to build with like Play On have also like really worked in tandem with this process. And so I'm aware of that. And then also I'm just like, Black folks, go get what is yours, because that actually belongs to you, and that labor actually belongs to them. Like you deserve this space where you get to come in and just like create your art and like do that part of it, while like white folks are in what Johannah and I have like named the back office, pushing the papers, pushing the documents and all of that. Yes, go and get your rest, the rest that allows you to just like create freely without having to worry about like, you know, any of the logistical stuff. And obviously like that kind of stuff sort of like filters into, this is theater, so everything is like, it's ancestral in the ways that like all of the departments, you know, like, you know, get together in those ways. But Black artists, create your own shit. Yes, always that support Black theater institutions who have been created to service you, but also get what is yours from these predominantly Black institutions.
And oh my God, thank you for trusting us enough to use your social capital in this way. Thank you, my goodness. And like that trust I don't want to let you down. I like, by building this relationship between our organization and Play On, and yes, on the backs of people who look like you in every sort of way, because right now, what's hot for funding? Give us the most diverse thing you can do for us to check that rubric. And so, like, I can't just use you as a prop. Look, JaMeeka's doing it.
Yeah,
Give
absolutely.
us your money. Like, I have to back that up with like trying every day to earn it.
Absolutely. And I actually love that. I'm sorry, Keyanna. I know we're like getting close to time, but I actually love that there's this understanding that predominantly white institutions and white with white leadership, understanding that trust has to be earned. And that's not something that we inherently come into the space like ready to give. The people lots of time become trustworthy, but that's also something that has to be cultivated and earned. And I think that sometimes we come in spaces and people are like, oh, you're here, like you should automatically trust me because I gave you that space. And I think that that's one of the things that we've been able to, like, because we've been working with each other now, Johannah, I think for about a year, sort of in a consistent sort of basis. And that trust is one that has had to be like cultivated, because I've worked with WTF before Johannah was in her position. So, that trust is something that has had to be, like you were saying, it earned in a way. And I love that you recognize that.
As JaMeeka mentioned, I am part of the team on Othello. So when I get to ask questions like, what's the communication structure for Othello? And then JaMeeka made the comment, right? Like, that's a loaded question because I'm in it. I know what the structure is. Like, I'm actively in the structure.
In like 5 ways.
And you're weird within the structure because you're on both sides. You are within the creative team and within the producing body. You're straddling both worlds of it in a very unique way.
The love I have for this particular part of the conversation is due in large fact of, I think at least JaMeeka and I can speak to, we have been in shows or have proximity to shows where it's very much like, oh, we're going to do that one black show and call it a day. And that communication structure is so drastically different than what we're doing in this production of Othello. And that's why I was like, oh, we have to talk about this, because we're exactly what JaMeeka said, right? We're not moving at, I'm stealing a Monet Marshall phrase, not moving at the speed of whiteness. I will say we, because again, I'm a part of the team, we're able to set our own pacing. We're able to communicate, this is exactly what I need, and this is how I work. And WTF, as the PWI in the situation, as the white folks in the situation, say bet. And that's kind of it. So yeah, and thank you, JaMeeka, because you were like, we're at time. And I was like, girl, you right.
That's the stage man. That's like the former stage managers in my muscle memory to like, what's the time?
Like, guess who were like, oh, I know we're at time, but yes, living for it, because I get caught up sometimes.
Like the little person here, you can't see her because of my. But she's here.
In our last 5 minutes, right? I just want to, so here are the pluggables, any shout outs. I'm going to start us off by saying, if you liked this conversation and you want to see Othello, visit Women's Theater Festival in the link, the website link, friends, it's in the description. Scroll, it's there. Buy your ticket. Anything else that either of you want to shout out, or any people that you want to shout out in these last 5 minutes?
I want to shout out the entire cast of Othello because they are brilliant minds, and I am such a lucky director to be able to step in the room and to be able to glean from their intellectual and emotional prowess and understanding. Also want to shout out Umfaniso Eudophia, who is the translator of this work. And I then want to shout out the amazing creative team behind Othello, which, like I said before, includes Keyanna and also features Monet Marshall, Aquila Butler, Aurelia Belfield, and I know I'm missing somebody. No, I think, and yeah, that's it, because Keyanna's the okay, I was thinking about it. Yes, Keyanna's like the too. And we've got some amazing personnel on the show, and all of the assistants and the folks who help keep this going. Shalimar Davis, and Tara Hodge, and Dee Dee, and all the amazing people. I just want to uplift them, and I want to, in general, uplift more theater making by Black women and BIPOC bodies. Just want to uplift that. Also, like, visit me on my website. JDH directed it. And if you like the work and want to see me continue forging ahead, and cash at me and PayPal me and all those fun things.
Johannah, did you have any shout outs?
I mean, that was a pretty great shout out.
It was a pristine shout out.
Pristine. And the only thing that I think I can add to it is, JaMeeka, I took a note of something you said about Othello and about Black women love the bard, and you said Black women changing the paradigms, and like that's to me the thesis of it, right? That your creative team, your cast, everybody approaching the work with care. And yes, come see Othello, come see Black women changing the paradigms, and know that all the tickets are pay what you can. So there's no cost barrier. And all of our ticket sales that go above what we need to balance our budget are written into shares for this brilliant team. So Women's Theater Festival is not trying to carry a profit over from this show with ticket sales. We're just trying to pay people.
Yes, we love all of that. Theater makers, thank you for coming to another episode of Theater's Not Dead. We had JaMeeka Holloway, Director of Othello. We have Johannah Maynard Edwards, Executive Producer of Othello. Wow, what a convo. What a time. Thank you both for your time and your talents. Okay, and now's that annoying part. We're going to close out the episode. Here we go. Follow us on Coffee. That link should be right about here-ish. I can never know if my video is mirrored or not. Also, we have merch. Get you some T&D merch because it's available at teespring.com. You can check out all the social medias. They're down below as well. So JaMeeka said her website is up. Guess what? It's in the description. Scroll. Just scroll. It's there. Be sure that you are getting tickets to Othello. I promise you're not going to miss it. Like, is this me being biased? Maybe a little, but objectively, you're not going to want to miss it. Also, make sure that you are liking this video. You are smashing the subscribe button. I think that's what the kids say now. And you're hitting the bell so you are notified for the next episode airing. I think that's everything this time. Hey, y'all. Theater's not dead.
Thank you, Key. Bye.